I'm Joyce Hornady. You might say accuracy is my business. I make bullets.
You are listening to the Hornady Podcast.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming back on for another episode of the Hornady Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Swerzik, and today, across from the table, I'm joined by a familiar face and voice, Mike Whitey Jensen, and a new face and a new voice, Nick Earixson. Guys, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, mentioned Whitey. You've been on the show before. The listener, the viewer, will know you as likely Whitey or Mike, and you've been on the show a couple of times. Nick, new to the show, explain to the listener what you do at Hornady, mainly just because I would like to know. And also, I'd like to, anytime we have a guest on the show that works at Hornady, one of the cool things about the podcast is it gives all of the viewers and all the listeners a chance to peek behind the curtain and see we're a small company, we're family owned, and the people here care about what they're doing, and this is their passion in life. So I want to hear, where'd you grow up and what was you doing as young Nick Earixson out causing a ruckus, and what got you into guns?
Yeah, well, we'll start with what I do at Hornady. That's a great question. A lot of people try to figure that out. Now I'm a kind of a jack of all trades. I'd work in the engineering department. I work on a lot of new cartridges, build a lot of the test fixtures, and work with new products. So, help develop, help the guys in the lab make sure that we're spooled up on test barrels and reamers and all that good stuff, and make sure that all the new stuff's going on without a hitch. So every time we start a new cartridge or bring a new cartridge to life, make sure that the technical data is on point, and send that out to gun manufacturers and make sure that we're all making the same product.
Awesome. And between the two of you guys, kind of in-house gunsmiths for Steve and Jason. I don't know how many times I see Whitey working on something, or Nick's got a barrel in the lathe and he's threading muzzles. What are you doing, Nick? Oh, threading this muzzle for Steve. He wants to take a suppressor with him to whatever hunt.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun, and the opportunities that Hornady has given me to expand on that has been absolutely wonderful, because nowhere else can you just go out and hop on a lathe and nobody really questions it.
Yeah.
So.
And not very many places you can work where you stroll up into the office with a kit. I mean, you got guns over your back and guns in the briefcase and working on different projects, and everybody runs towards you to see, what's Nick got today?
What's the latest and greatest. So,
yeah.
No, it's been good. Grew up in Northwest Missouri. Just a typical farm kid, always hunted everything, so.
Coyotes, girls, deer.
Yeah, everything. No, I had a couple buddies growing up. Their dad was really into reloading and firearms, and I grew, I flew to that like a moth to a flame. Rick taught me a lot of things, how to reload, how to make sure everything was good, clean a gun, mount a scope, all that good stuff. So I owe a lot to him for sure. And found my way to Hornady and haven't looked back since.
Awesome. So just a gun nut from the word go. And then before you were at Hornady, worked at a gun shop of some sort?
Yep. Worked at a gun shop. We did a lot of sales there, a lot of training. Worked in we had an indoor firing range, so did some training there and a little bit of gunsmithing on the side of that too. So
awesome. And it just goes to show the listener, the viewer, just another cog in the machine, if you will, of people who are passionate about the industry. Not just Hornady, but just guns in general. And Nick, the reason we have you and Whitey on the show today, we haven't done a podcast about revolvers. And I think Revolver, you got like the Dirty Harry, Elmer Keith. You've got these cool guys with these, big guns. And I don't think there's anybody in our company that is more passionate about the use, the collection, the gunsmithing in Whitey's case regarding revolvers as you guys. So I want to bring you on the show and really dive into everything revolver, because when I started at Hornady, I didn't know that Nick had every Smith & Wesson ever made in his, in storage.
Not everything, but close.
I knew right away that Whitey was a revolver guy, and not just, I bought some guns. He's building cylinders, he's chambering guns, and he's hunting the world with a revolver. And that just was such a cool factor to me. And I'm excited to hear your guys' comments on on that part of it, but I would like to hear, before we get into anything revolver related, specifically what got you guys into revolvers. Whitey, what was the thing where you were like, I'm gravitating towards this wheel gun kind of thing?
Well, I started out with a Colt Python 357. Like you said, it was like the first Magnum out there. So I started out shooting one of those, and then later bought a 44 mag, and I just was gravitated to it. But probably the persons or people that drew me to revolvers the most were probably, of course, the big revolver, the big Magnums, like the 454 Casull, and of course Dick Casull and Bob Baker were. So of course they built those or come out with that revolver in '83, I think it was, 1983. So those people drew me to it because I wanted one of those guns.
Yeah. And you were helping develop the XTP pistol bullet.
And then we were developing the pistol bullets, that whole line of pistol bullets. So I was interested in that. Of course, wanted to build a tough enough bullet for the Casull as well. And then, of course, and probably the other person that influenced me a lot was John Lineball. John Lineball was an amazing revolver pistol person altogether. I mean, rest in peace, God rest him.
Yeah.
He passed in March, I believe it was.
Okay.
So, which was kind of a shock to everybody, but yeah.
And you've gravitated, it sounds like, to the big stuff.
So so now of course, my favorite gun is a 475 line ball. That's what I use a vast majority of the time, and the 454 Casull is probably my two big guns. So
it seems like, listening to that maybe in the 70s and 80s time frame, you were kind of drawn to revolver because there was a lot going on. There was influential folks, like you mentioned, coming out with big guns, big cartridges, and as a bullet maker, you were just kind of drawn to that big, heavy, powerful handgun kind of thing.
Right. And I'm kind of a classic single action revolver guy.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I think Bob Baker's built me a 41 mag, so I like the older classic guns and stuff like that too as well.
Okay.
Did you know that Hornady has a full line of reloading tools and equipment? Whether you're brand new to the reloading game or a seasoned veteran, we have tools that will work awesome with your setup. Check out all of Hornady's reloading tools at Hornady.com.
Now, Nick, I'm guessing it was Dirty Harry or something along those lines that just said, hey, these are cool.
Absolutely. No, the Smith & Wesson Models 29. Yeah, that was a Dirty Harry gun.
Yeah.
The double action, that's where I'm at. I like the double action. Smith 686s, Pythons, even some Dan Wessons. Those are really, really nice shooting guns for sure. So
you were just growing up and thought they looked cool, or was it
100%? Growing up, late '80s, early '90s action movies. That's what the good guys had, was big, long, shiny revolvers. So that's where it grew up, and nobody really had pistols when I grew up. Everyone had rifles and shotguns. So if you were gonna venture down that path, that was the path to take, because generally, a revolver shoots better than a semi-auto, and you can hunt with them and silhouette shoot and do some other stuff with them. They're more versatile than what most of the semi-autos were. So that's kind of led me to it.
That makes sense. So, if we rewind the clocks and look at historical revolvers, now this isn't a historical episode, we're going to focus more on the hunting and the practical use of modern revolvers now, but you go back a long ways. I mean, there was a variant of a revolver back in the 1500s. Obviously, it was kind of muzzle stuffed, 8 chambers, I believe, German maybe, and then some pepper box guns that had one cylinder but several barrels and other things like that. And then you get into Samuel Colt and Smith & Wesson in the mid 1800s, and things kind of really took off. And what really accelerated that was, one, rifled barrels. Right around that Civil War time frame, and post Civil War, you've got rifled barrels that greatly help the accuracy, and self-contained cartridges. That was huge, and that really helped make revolvers what they are. And then by the time you get to turn of the century, that right around 1900, the revolvers were they were staples. That was the pistol. And then obviously you had the 1911 semi-automatic that came along, but from around the turn of the century until, probably up until the 80s, that was kind of the law enforcement gun of choice.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. So go back to the Wild West. That's what everybody thinks of as a single action Colt or a Schofield.
The
those
proverbial 6-shooter.
Yeah, and it was a way to get extra shots without having to reload. That and the lever gun were a match set at that point. Everybody had one or the other or both.
Chambered in probably 4440.
4440. Yeah, that was. Yeah. 45 Colt on some, 3840 on others, but so it's kind of interesting that most sidearms were the same caliber as what your rifle was too. It's made it kind of convenient.
I guess, yeah. If you had a bandolier, you got a lever gun on the horse and a 6-shooter on your side.
Yeah. So no, it's the way that the technology has evolved over. It took hundreds of years to get to that point, and then it was just crazy. The manufacturing helped a lot in the evolution of the revolver for sure.
So if we look at cartridges that were available in the revolver and the revolvers themselves, everything kind of, I'm going to say mild, up until 357 Magnum. And what was the 357 Mag and how influential was that? Because that didn't come out until the mid-30s. Right.
So, it started with basically a Smith & Wesson Model 10, a Colt Police Positive, same kind of gun, 38 Special. And a lot of people were carrying that, but it didn't have a whole lot of power. And most of the bullets that were loaded in it were lead, a wad cutter or semi-wad cutter. Jacketed bullets really didn't become popular until you got to the Magnum. The introduction of the Magnum, Smith & Wesson Model 27, and that's what did it. That's added the extra 200, 300 feet per second. That's where you had to get into the jacketed bullets because the lead, wouldn't hold up. And, that turned the handgun into kind of what it is. You could hunt with it. It gave you more power.
So from a 357 Mag to 38 Special, like you mentioned, you get a substantial, it's not marginal. You're talking 200 feet per second plus in some instances with heavier bullets. So that kind of changed the scape of the revolver, not just the cartridges, but the guns themselves. At the prior to 1930, you had a lot of top break action, not a ton of side loading revolvers like you see now, which is so popular. So you had the 357 Mag, and then kind of quickly followed being a relative term, quickly followed by 44 Special and 44 Mag, and now we're getting into some serious stopping power in regard to handgun cartridges.
Yeah, no, and one thing about the 27, that was the first Magnum frame gun, so that that was bigger than a Model 10. That was quite a bit bigger. The cylinder was bigger. Everything on it was bigger, and with the development of that gun, it led forward to doing bigger and crazier things.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't have the 27, you wouldn't have a 44 Mag because that's what the original, that frame was built on. So,
and I say a relative term, because that came out in the 30s. Well, it wasn't until the 50s that you have the 44 Magnum, and we couldn't really talk about revolvers without talking about Elmer Keith. And I'm not a Elmer Keith historian, but from what I understand, that man was pretty tuned in to pushing the boundaries of revolvers.
Oh yeah.
And heavy hand in, I believe, the 357 Mag and the 44 Mag.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. He had done a lot of development. He had a ranch up in Montana or Wyoming, and he was notorious for overloading stuff and breaking Colts. And so he was kind of hard on things, but he was a pioneer for sure, and he wasn't afraid to push the envelope and change it and, crazy ideas. I've read a couple books of his, and it's absolutely amazing what he was able to do up on his ranch, because Like, holy.
It's amazing he still had both hands when he was done.
Yeah. Yeah, and he didn't believe in putting it in a vise and pulling it with a string.
Yeah.
He shot everything by hand, so.
Yeah.
Must have had hands of steel like Whitey's.
Oh, yeah. They're bear paws.
Well, both of you guys have really big hands for the listener out there. Yeah, and I have a gimp thumb and small hands, and I'm not too keen on shooting big revolvers. But the 44 mag, huge, probably not a huge law enforcement presence there in the 50s, 60s, 70s, kind of stuck to the 357. Way more tameable to shoot.
Easier to shoot, probably. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And most of the 44 mags were, 6 or 8 inch barrels. They weren't really a personal defense at that point, or they were hard to conceal, a 6 inch. A lot of the 27s or the police positive models were, 4 inch, 3.5 inch, 4 inch, stuff like that. So it made it easier to get in and out of a holster and more manageable. Recoil is more manageable. So
sure. And what I really like, we mentioned it earlier about having, in the Wild West, you had a revolver and a lever action chambered in the same thing. And I really like 38 Special 357 and 44 Special 44 mag for that same reason. You can have a revolver, you can have a lever gun, and if you want to bring the recoil down and just shoot the heck out of it, shoot the heck out of it. I've got a Smith & Wesson with the 8 3/8 inch barrel, the 629, the classic dirty hairy gun. And my uncle, who I inherited that gun from, full house, 240 grain, as hard and fast as he could, all of his life. And now that I get to shoot that gun, it's getting 44 Special. I'm not impressing anybody. I just want to shoot it and have fun. So I really like that versatility. We'll talk more about hunting, but on the law enforcement side, how far do we have to come forward in our timeline before those revolvers really kind of got phased out? Because for a long time, I would say 100 years, the revolver was kind of the standard for a lot of law enforcement.
Sure.
I know with the Glocks, and let's say that came out, in the 80s, there was some 1911 presence for sure, but now you don't hear anybody carrying a revolver.
It's rare to find somebody that carry a revolver, especially in law enforcement.
Yeah. I think some of them probably still do. I bet there's some game wardens that...
There's probably a few, but...
Yeah, no, there's a few. There's a couple guys that don't actually have to qualify, they don't have to shoot hundreds
small
of rounds,
PD.
so they still carry a Model 10 or a 686 or a Python just because. No, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because if you come back to a 41 mag, that was its whole presence.
Oh, the 41 mag. When did that come out?
So late 60s early 60s was the development on that cartridge, and it was basically the in between a 357 and a 44 mag. So there's a lot of guys that wanted more penetration, more stopping power, but the 357 didn't offer it, and the 44 was too much for them. So a 41 mag was developed by Remington, and it's a niche cartridge. It is just a sweetheart. I like a 41 mag for sure.
I don't own one, but I remember starting here at Hornady, unfamiliar with it, and I was like, 41 mag? That just, it's kind of got this romantic thing to it. Like, it's not a 44, it's not a 357, it's not mainstream, and it's just cool. So developed, like you mentioned, almost explicitly for law enforcement, obviously plenty of hunting application.
Yeah, no, and it was mainly a law enforcement gun, and I don't think it ever took off as much as they wanted it to. Definitely, most people that want a 41 mag now are hunting with it because it does do such a great job. I mean, we offer a 210 grain XTP and 190 grain FTX.
Yep.
And again, cool part about it, Henry's making a lever action in it, so you can get a lever action and your sidearm as well. So. But most people shooting 41 mags now are hunting with it, pigs and deer and light game stuff.
Super versatile.
Oh, yeah. I have taken pigs with mine for sure. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I've got Bob Baker's making me one, Freedom Arms, in the smaller frame.
Okay.
That's why.
That's out of character.
That's why I ordered.
Yeah.
I ordered it because it's in the smaller frame, and I thought it'd be a little more packable.
Yeah.
Put it in behind my binoculars.
That makes sense.
It'd be plenty shootable.
A little less recoil, a little more manageable.
Yeah, follow-up shots.
Getting old, yeah.
I won't consider you old until I see you in a tree stand, Whitey.
Oh, yeah.
That probably won't happen.
That'll be a while.
So really, the revolver, starting as soon as revolvers were invented, up until well into the 80s and 90s, it was a staple in law enforcement, and we still make and still sell a critical duty SKU in law enforcement, 357 Magnum.
Yeah, it's
125 grain,
100,
or 35.
35, 135 grain, critical duty. And that bullet works good. I mean, it's shot through the same FBI protocol as our 40s and 9mm and all that good stuff too. So, no, that's a good SKU, and we still sell quite a bit of it, really.
Yeah, and that's what kind of struck me as odd. But then I think, like, where we live, most of it's all Glock, but in rural areas where maybe you have a smaller sheriff's office or a city PD or a county PD, not populated, and you're generally going to end up shooting a wounded cow on the side of the road that got hit by a car or a deer, something like that. There's still plenty of applicability for a wheel gun.
Oh yeah, and I think the majority of it goes down south. I think Texas buys a lot of it.
Oh yeah. I think now that you mentioned that, I have heard that from our sales team.
Yeah,
which is cool.
Yeah,
to think about. You got the guy on big Texas.
Yeah.
Well, and with Colt bringing back the Python and the Anaconda, that brought a surge sales on that as well.
Sure.
Rick Grimes from The Walking Dead always carried a 6-inch Python too. So I think a lot of guys are coming back to that just cause.
Yep. Well, we owe a lot for sure to Samuel Colt and Smith & Wesson and many others. But now I'm going to shift gears and kind of rewind a little bit. So the law enforcement, it just kind of got phased out because of the reliability and the amount of rounds you can carry in a semi-automatic striker fire pistol. So you don't see a lot of 1911s. You see a lot of Glock. A lot of SIG out there, and you're carrying 17, 18, 20 rounds of 9mm, and that makes sense for law enforcement. We get that. You had about 100 years of a good run of revolvers being the staple for law enforcement carry. But if we go back to the 50s, where you got Elmer Keith and a handful of other guys pushing the boundaries of not just the cartridge, but the gun builders. Give me a bigger gun, bigger frame, bigger cylinder, with these cartridges that they were using for hunting. And that's where I want to spend the rest of our time talking is revolvers for hunting, because there's just something cool, and not everybody can say that they've done it. I personally have not. It's on my to-do list this year. I've got 44 mag in the safe with a dot on that thing, ready to go take out into the woods.
Those guns shoot good too.
So starting in the 50s, you have the 44 mag, and that most people now would say is kind of the minimum medicine that you want to take for, say, grizzly defense. But for your primary cartridge for deer and stuff like that, did the 44 kind of set the tone, or was it playing second fiddle to the 357, or how did that accelerate in the 50s to present day?
Oh, I'm shot deer with 357 as well as 44, and of course I like the bigger.
Yeah.
When you get the more range and you get a little more velocity, and you can shoot a little further. That's because, face it, on a revolver, a lot of your limitations on your distance, you can put a scope on and what have you and shoot further, but you still have to keep in mind that the velocity drops off really quickly. Yeah. The energy drops off fairly quickly. So it's something that you have to be aware of.
Yep. So your range is limited.
So then you look at cartridges or things that can shoot, that faster. You can, if you want to shoot further for deer or sheep or something like that. But if you're shooting something big, and face it, anything that's big is, you want to take dangerous. It ain't dangerous if it is 200 yards. So
yeah.
So
that's true.
That's the goal, is to get in close on the big ones, and
sounds like you got a screw loose, Mike. Is what that sounds like. I know you like to get in close, and that's cool. So 44 probably taking the lion's share of hunting until, like you mentioned, that late 70s, early 80s time frame. You saw a drastic rise in development.
Yeah, not only bullet type, but cartridges that could shoot further and make extend your range as far as for hunting, I suppose.
When you got to throw in the 45 Colt there too, because there's been a fair share of guns, big guns, Magnum guns, and 45 Colt, and that's what helped drive the Casull development.
Right.
But I think a lot of it is jacketed bullets and bullet technology that's really helped the handgun out. And when you get a good jacketed bullet with positive expansion, that's really what drove handgun hunting.
That's a good point, because up until the early 80s, a lot of the jacketed pistol bullets were only half jacketed.
Yeah, they're just short jackets.
Or they were like a 3/4 or a 7/8 type of jacket, and they had the lead was really exposed. And our XTP was one of the first that folded that jacket all the way up the ogive and then pulled inside the hollow cavity to really control the expansion.
And when we developed that, I actually developed that using the 454 Casull as a base. So when we developed that, we wanted to make that. Of course, we built it out of a tougher jacket for the Casull, but after we built that and wrapped that around on and shot it out of the Casull and proved that we could make a bullet like that. And Steve's looking at it, and he's like, "We could do this on a whole line of bullets. We could do this on everything."
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, and that's kind of spurred.
Yeah. So like
our playing around with the 454 Casull actually kind of spurred the rest of the line.
Did you get Steve's permission to play around with what became the XTP first or after?
Well, that was kind of a gray area there, I guess.
And that just all goes back to we as an employee base are so passionate about what we do. You needed a bullet because you wanted a Casull.
Because I bought a Casull, and then I wanted to build a bullet that I could shoot out of it.
And it turned out to service the whole industry.
So we were playing around on a Saturday or a weekend and basically come up with this bullet. And then
how cool is that?
It turned out to be something that we could add to the whole line.
And it revolutionized
something.
Yeah, not just at Hornady, but now that's kind of a standard if you're getting a jacketed hollow point bullet, that it's going to have a design similar to that. And like Nick mentioned, if you hadn't done that, been able to wrap that bullet to really control the expansion, the Casull, the 460, the line bars, all those big cartridges, they would have overexpanded and underpenetrated with those legacy bullet designs.
Right.
Well, even go back to 40 Smith & Wesson or 10 mil. I realize we're on Revolver, but a lot of those cartridges couldn't exist without a good bullet there as well.
They got more bullet mass and more velocity, and you're just going to force that thing open too quickly.
Yep.
The Hornady Security Fireproof Keypad Safe. With a heavy-duty 16-gauge steel body, extra-thick 8-gauge steel door, and 4 1-inch diameter locking lugs, the fireproof safe achieves a fire rating of 30 minutes for up to 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit. Both the interior and adjustable shelf are covered in a protective carpet that offers flexible storage configurations while safeguarding valuables from damage. The Fireproof Keypad Safe from Hornady Security.
So you've got the 80s as being a huge, you've got, like you'd mentioned, you've got the BFRs that, you've got the Casulls was the big one, the line bar, the 480 Ruger, that was significantly later, but in that same big high power family. And then like Nick, you mentioned the 45 Colt, you've got a slew of 45 caliber cartridges that can still shoot the 45 Colt.
Yeah.
Just adding to the versatility. So I'm quite unfamiliar with the history, so hopefully you guys can help me out. The 454 Casull, the most powerful handgun cartridge at the time, and of the big handguns I've shot, that one bites the worst of the bigger ones that I've shot. When did the 460 Smith & Wesson come into play? It was significantly after the Casull.
Oh, yeah.
By a couple decades, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, easily.
2000s, in the 2000s, and we did that development with Smith & Wesson on it. I can't give you an exact date.
Sure.
As well before my time, of course, but
it's probably a good 20 years later.
Yeah.
Because I think Casull was 83 when Dick Casull entered that first 454.
Mm-hmm. So you've got a couple decades there, and now you've got this huge cartridge. I mean, monster cartridge in a revolver, and then enter 500 Smith & Wesson.
Well, the 500 actually came before the
Did
460.
It really?
Yeah.
Okay, so the 500 even bigger.
Yeah, and I think Corbon is the one who introduced that.
Okay.
So again, with Smith & Wesson, they built that big frame, that big cylinder, and since they already had that, then we worked on the 460 with them.
Yeah, and I've shot the 500, I've shot the 460, and I've shot the Casull, and I don't know if it's just the guns that I've shot, but I'm telling you what, the Casull bites right here, and like I said, I got a gimp thumb on this hand, but it bites pretty good, and the 460 seems a little more tameable. Again, that's a big cartridge, but the Smith & Wesson that we have, big vented barrel, so that helps.
Big gun, big, heavy.
The Casull operates a little bit higher pressure, too, as far as that goes.
Okay. So today, if you're a handgun romantic and you're into hunting with it, you've got a smattering of cartridges as small as 357 mag, as big as 500 Smith & Wesson. So from 50 cal to 35 cal, you've got tons of options and bullets to go along with it. And we've got our XTP bullet, like you mentioned. And Whitey, you mentioned this in the earlier in the podcast. There's no doubt that, the way you put it, that animal's not dangerous at 200 yards. You got to get in close. And these bullets need velocity to work, and they lose velocity really quickly.
Right.
So enter
they
FTX
work
bullet.
close.
Our FTX bullet, with the Dave Emery and the help of several others, that really brings even more long range potential. I say long range as in relation to traditional handgun hunting,
right?
Because we were able to put a pointed ogive on this thing. So now you've got an actual ogive that's got a point on it, so it holds on to velocity longer, still safe in a tubular magazine.
Yep.
Oh yeah, and that helped with Henrys and Marlins and Winchesters to feed the FTX to make those guns a little bit more relevant and user friendly and to be able to hunt with them too.
And that flex tip, it's called flex because it's gooey's not the right word, but it's soft, malleable, and so at low velocity impact speeds, it sets back and really pushes that bullet open. So we've got kind of two flagship products there for the handgun market. Enter newest ammo for our handgun, and we call it out on the label, Handgun Hunter.
Oh yeah, that monoflex, that is an impressive bullet. I mean, that's going to be a Whitey brainchild again. He makes a lot of it work. So
I can't take credit for that. I mean, Jeremy Millard and them guys and Tyler now they're taking that they're taking that to another level.
Yeah,
we just built a 500.
Oh, that thing is
insane.
It's massive.
That is.
And so people that don't quite understand this or aren't familiar with it, lead is very, very dense. So if you want to make a really heavy bullet, it doesn't have to be that long because lead is so dense. Right. Well, when you take the lead out and make it a copper alloy, like ours is copper and zinc, you want to make it heavy, you end up with... that thing's got to look like a lug nut. Like, it's got to be huge.
I mean, that's basically what it does look like. It's got a big hollow point that's filled in with some...
elastomer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those monolithic bullets, have you guys shot those for animals yet?
I've only shot pigs with them and stuff like that, but I haven't. I didn't use that on the moose that I hunted this year. I had the Casull along in case we found a sheep.
Okay.
And I had the handgun hunter with that one in my Casull, and that thing really shoots phenomenal. I was shooting out to 200 meters with it.
Scoped.
I
Awesome.
was going to say, I took my Nebraska whitetail 2 years ago with the 44 mag, and it did exactly what it was supposed to. I mean, it just opened up and killed it on the spot, like a 25-yard shot, and had no issues whatsoever.
Awesome. So we've got several options from our XTP bullet that you can find in custom. You can find it in American Gunner. We've got the classic XTP that Whitey helped pioneer. The FTX, which is found in our Lever Evolution, perfectly at home in a revolver. Going to expand well at low velocities. In our most recent ammo SKU, the Handgun Hunter monoflex bullet with the elastomer tip. So whether you're looking for deep penetration, a lead-free option, that's the Handgun Hunter, the classic performance of the XTP, or that kind of holds on to velocity a little bit longer, a little bit better BC, still going to hit hard, and the lever evolution with that FTX. So I want to make this a little more personal now and talk about your handgun setups for hunting. And maybe if a listener's out there doesn't have a handgun setup for hunting, what would you recommend for them? And then what's it look like compared to your personal handgun setups?
Well, of course,
You're a little different.
I'm a single action revolver guy, so I for my hunting,
Mhm.
I lean towards the single action revolver. I think they're the strongest, the most accurate.
Mhm.
They're not the most easy to handle and play with, but as far as reloading and stuff like that. But I mean, let's face it, when you're in the middle of shooting an animal, you ain't gonna have any time to reload anyway.
No, right.
So you better get her done in 4 or 5 rounds.
Yeah.
But
Yours are big.
But I like the Freedom Arms. Freedom Arms makes one of the most accurate, the most strongest revolvers
Mhm.
on the market. So you can push them. And they're super accurate. I mean, I mentioned I could shoot that one out to 200 meters. Now, would I recommend shooting an animal out, a healthy animal at 200 meters with a 454 Cazoo? Probably not.
No, but if you had to make a follow-up shot on a wounded,
Right. I mean, but, I try to hold my distances into ethical ranges, but yeah, but that's just how accurate they are.
Yeah.
They'll shoot out to 200 meters without no problem.
most of your handgun hunting setups scoped? Do you do some open sight?
I got my 475 is a 5 5/8 barrel, and then I run it's a Freedom Arms, and then I run a Delta Pro on it.
Okay,
So
perfect. Yeah, the loopholed red dot with the really small
with
dot.
a 2.5.
Mhm.
So and it shoots really good. I mean, I can shoot out to. I mean, I can shoot out further with it, but I mean, I can shoot to 100 yards.
Yeah.
And put them in the palm of your hand, pretty much on a
That's
475. So
Wow.
it's
Nick,
And that's a Cazoo, right?
that's the line ball.
That's the line
475
ball. Okay.
475 line
yeah.
ball.
And your
which
Cazoo scoped out?
my Cazoo is scoped with a 2.5 to 8 power Leopold on it,
Okay.
and
That probably stacks them in there.
and that stacks them in there really well.
I bet.
I mean, it's just about at 50 yards, it's just a ragged hole. At 100, it's maybe a couple inches.
That's got to feel good. So when you do get dangerously close, you feel confident.
I feel confident the guns will do as long as I do my part, the
Yeah.
guns will do their part.
Nick, what's your handgun hunting setup look like? You running scopes, open sights, and what cartridges?
Well,
and guns?
it comes down to what you're doing and where you're going. So, my main gun that I do a lot of the hunting with is a 8 3/8 full under lug Smith & Wesson 629, and I've got a Leupold fixed 4-power handgun scope on it. And again, just it's a pleasure to shoot. It shoots really nice. 44 mag, 300 grain XTPs is what it likes. And then when we go pig hunting and stuff like that, I try to shoot open sights. 41 mag, custom shop, ported. It's a cool gun. And then backpacking, I've got a Scandium frame. So what model is that? 329 PD is what that is. So 4-inch barrel, Scandium frame, 44 mag.
Super light.
Super light. I've got a nice Alaskan guide, Alaskan series, something. Holster tucks it in tight underneath so your backpack straps aren't in the way or anything like that. So that's what I took to Alaska when I went up there, and it's handy. It's 6 shots of big,
Probably
powerful.
not a joy to shoot.
Oh, it sucks. But if you're getting charged by a bear, it doesn't really matter. So that's what that one's for. So
Okay.
don't really actively hunt with it, but for a backpacking gun, I've been on a couple bear hunts and have taken it, and it's wonderful. Sheep hunts, so on and so forth. So
Awesome. So I'm going to pitch this back over to Whitey, and I'll come to you next, Nick. If you had to tell a listener, hey, you want to get into handgun hunting, you want to just try it out, what would you guide them to from a cartridge, maybe even a gun standpoint?
Well, of course, first it'd have to be an idea whether or not he was recoil sensitive and what have you. If he's recoil sensitive, the
And
41 mag is probably a good starting.
Hunting deer, let's say.
You say he's hunting deer and stuff. He's just starting out hunting small game deer. I mean, a 41 mag is going to be easy enough to, of course, granted, you can load any of them down and practice with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you have to shoot them
full house every time.
Well, and that's where the specials come in. If you get a 357 or a 44, you could always shoot the specials to get comfortable with it and get familiar with the gun for sure.
So, I would recommend that he, something shootable, but still strong enough. 44 mag, 41, even a 357, you could get her done.
Okay.
But I still like the single action revolvers. I think Ruger makes a good one. There's a number of
they make a
decent. You don't have to
Super Red Hawk, and then they make a Black Hawk Hunter that's already got the rail on it with the rings and stuff, so you can put a scope on it. Those are really nice for what they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you're going to really get into it and you really, really want to do it serious, you can't go wrong with the Freedom Arms, but they are more expensive.
Sure. Nick, what do you think? If somebody's like, Nick, I want to go shoot a whitetail deer with a handgun, what should I buy? What cartridge? What are you going to tell them?
Yeah, I mean, in basically, I'm going to start with price point. Where do you want to go? How much do you want to spend? What are you going to do with it? Taurus makes some really nice double action stuff now. I mean, they make that Raging Hunter or whatever. They look cool. They shoot pretty good. We've got a couple of those that we're sending on some rider hunts and stuff. And
that's the ones I have on my safe.
Yeah, and they put a red dot on them, and they shoot really well. For the money, the Rugers, you can get into those, and we've got a Red Hawk Hunter, I think, or a Black Hawk Hunter, and it's got a scope in it in the lab that we shoot bullets out of all the time just because it does shoot good, and it's heavy enough. Recoil is not bad at all. So I'm gonna push people towards a 44 mag though, because it's one of those that it's not so big, it's unmanageable, but it's big enough that it'll do about everything you need it to do. So
awesome. That's a good choice. And like you mentioned, where you can throw the specials in there, don't have to hand load. You can bring the recoil down. So just again on a personal note, Whitey, what have you all taken from a game species with the revolvers, and what have you pursued with the revolvers that you might not have been successful on yet?
Well, I haven't as many as I'd like to, but I've hunted, of course, antelope. We did a lot of antelope hunting with revolvers. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I bet.
You can't really. I mean, you think of them as long distance animals, but they're so much fun to hunt with a revolver. You got to do a lot of crawling and a lot of stuff, a lot of flagging and what have you. But they're more than doable with a handgun. And of course, hogs and deer and
whitetail and mule deer.
Whitetail and mule deer, and of course moose. And then I haven't. I wish I could say more than that. I've hunted more than that.
Yeah,
but
that's what I was going to say. I know you've taken it on a brown bear hunt.
But then it's just still a matter of getting the right shot, getting the right opportunity. You don't want to make with those guns. You want to make sure that you got a good. Face it, they're going to be less power than you do with a high-powered rifle.
Sure.
So you still have to make a good shot, and you still have to, if in order to make an ethical deal, you just can't take just any shot you want. So you got to kind of pick your shots. And
that makes sense. And yeah, I could see that being a big challenge from the hunting standpoint.
Right. It's just like archery hunting. I mean, we're very close.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to pick your shots, and you may hunt them. You may hunt a lot of different things, but doesn't mean you're always going to come home with one.
Right. Well, I wish you luck. Hopefully you can get a brown bear down with one. That'd be cool. But let's not glaze past the fact that you killed a slammer mule deer. Was that with the 475?
Yeah.
Out west, public land?
Out west and public land, yeah.
That was cool. That was a cool
he was a nice mule deer, for one of my best ones.
And that's saying something. So
yeah.
Congrats on that. Nick, I know you've been laying down
I'm
deer.
not gonna pass over the mule deer. Let's talk about the moose that he killed with the 475
recently
3 months ago.
I was gonna if you're listening to this podcast, check out the Hornady Instagram, Hornady Facebook, because there was a post. Whitey drove from Alaska with his moose rack chained to the top of his topper, pulls in the parking lot, and you got everybody from Hornady bailing outside of the parking lot.
No, not only a moose, he did it with a handgun. That's a feat within itself for sure.
I didn't even take a rifle with me. He didn't even
put a lot of eggs in the basket.
We're like, I put the shooting sticks in there and the handgun on the horse, and away we went. Didn't bring a rifle with us.
That's awesome. Nick, what have you been able to take? Because I know
maybe I should have gone first because my resume is not quite as impressive as Whitey's.
That's all right.
I've shot my fair share of things. Quite a few pigs with some handguns, a cow elk, and a couple whitetail. So, not slacking by any means.
No, not by any means.
But not near as great as Whitey over here.
Well, I know a lot of people who have had handguns their whole lives and maybe have shot a whitetail deer, but generally some small game targets, shooting pop cans, that kind of thing. So to actually put them into use is pretty cool. So for the listener out there, Hornady has everything you could imagine for ammunition to service your handgun hunting adventures, whether that be our classic XTP, that modern lever evolution with the FTX, or the monolithic handgun hunter. We've got something for everybody. And if you've considered it, get out there and do it. Like we talked about, I've got some 44s in my safe right now that I've been shooting, that we got ready for some riders hunts. And I was like, you know what? This is just fun.
Oh, yeah.
This is a blast. So it's on my docket, whether that be a whitetail doe or maybe a mule deer or something like that. I'm going to try my hand at getting something laid down with the revolver.
Oh, you got to, 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
Power and performance in the palm of your hand. Hornady Handgun Hunter Ammunition. Built around the tough copper alloy Monoflex handgun bullet that features a proprietary elastomer tip, deep penetration, and high weight retention. Handgun Hunter Ammunition. As rough and rugged as the conditions and game demand.
The one thing I would recommend is do a lot of practicing.
Absolutely.
A lot of practicing. I spent a lot of time practicing, maybe putting a pound of weight on each hound and then shooting daily.
That's an old school trick there.
Yeah, I'd put a pound. Yeah, well, I was shooting IHMSA competition back then.
Oh, sure.
So I was trying, and we did a lot of offhand shooting on that.
Yeah.
And a lot of offhand. So I would weigh each hand, and then I would shoot, and then maybe have an empty, and then spin the revolver, and then so that you could find out if you've got a flinch or anything like that. So I mean, it takes a little bit of practice to just like a bow. It takes practice if you're going to shoot well with it.
Yeah. And it's a perishable skill.
Right.
Yeah, it can go away quickly if you let it get rusty.
Yeah, and you get older, you got to keep up on it.
Yeah. Awesome.
For sure.
Was there anything else in the world of revolvers that you want to mention to the listener that we might have glossed over?
If you can buy a rimfire in a revolver, that's a riot. I mean, we went prairie dog hunting this spring.
We laid them out with that thing.
What is it? 300 yards is
327 yards. Yeah. I remembered it because it's a small block Chevy engine size, so it was pretty distinguishable.
It's just a 22 rimfire, just
laying them out. Smith & Wesson.
Yeah, Smith & Wesson 617.
Yeah, that'd be good practice.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And
no recoil, quiet.
Yeah, you could single hand it. You could do the classic high power stance, which was fun and accurate.
Oh yeah, they shoot really well.
Yep. Yeah, so that's a good point. If you're gonna maybe try your hand at it, get your gun, do practice with your gun, but don't be afraid to also get a trainer, if you will, in a rimfire. A little bit more economical, easier to shoot.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited for hunting season. It's hunting season now, and I can't help but be excited. The deer are running amok. I woke up this morning with a swollen neck. I had to fight off the urge to pee in the yard and go run around. It's that time of year, and I'm getting more and more excited to get the handgun back out. And again, I've been shooting them, and I'm confident you guys will be doing the same. So we can't let anybody off the show, and Whitey's answered this. So Nick, we ask every new guest on the show the same question, and this is very hypothetical and completely made up in a different universe. But if you had to choose one cartridge and one bullet for the rest of your life. Now, you could have infinite guns and infinite ammo, but it had to be the same cartridge, same bullet for the rest of your life. Nick Earixson, what would you choose for the majority of your shooting that you do? Because you span rimfire, lever actions, bolt guns, long range, competition, hunting. I mean, you do a lot of shooting, so what's it going to be?
Man, I don't know. As far as like a hunting aspect and what you do, I got to go big. That way you've got it covered. But, a classic, a 375 H&H, and then, that 250 grain GMX or CX bullet. It's got a nice high BC on it. Penetration is phenomenal. It shoots good. I mean, yeah, you're going to have a little recoil, but you've got enough for everything you could ever want.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
That's a fair answer.
That's a good answer. Because I got a few big things on my bucket list, and
Whitey, I forget what you said when we had you on the show.
I know it was really hard. It was a 475 line ball.
That's what I thought it was.
Because it has a big enough bullet that I could hunt dangerous game critters, big critters, as well as anything in between.
And you could put it in a Ruger number 1 or a lever gun.
And I could put it in a lever gun. I could put it in a number 1. I could shoot it in multiple. I could shoot it in rifles. I could shoot it in handgun.
We had somebody say 375 Ruger, so this is kind of right in that same wheelhouse.
I mean, the Ruger is, I think, superior. It's a better cartridge. You get a little bit more velocity, and it's not a belted cartridge. But another good thing about the H&H is it is a time-honored classic. It's been, there's a lot of safari journals that were written with the 375 H&H, and it's historic and grand. It's not modern. It's not the best. It's not. Trust me, I know it's it's kind of like Whitey. It's getting a little old in age, but it's still good. It gets the job done. And yeah, the Ruger 375 Ruger is twice the cartridge it is, but I just like the H&H.
Yep. Well, I can't slight you for it. And if you have to pick one, and you're going to do hunting all over the world, from brown bear and some dangerous game down to whitetail deer, it'll certainly kill a prairie dog and a coyote. So, and a great bullet choice to go with it. The CX bullet, like you mentioned, it's got a good BC. It's big enough and heavy enough for the dangerous game you're likely to encounter, and not so much bullet that you wouldn't, grossly be overboard for something like a deer or an elk or something like that. So, like I said, we ask everybody on the podcast the same question, and it's been kind of interesting to hear everybody's different answer. So, sorry to put you on the spot like that. We don't want to.
I can kind of understand that, because I bought a classic dangerous game rifle not too long ago.
Yeah.
And I picked the 404 Jeffries, which is kind of a classic old round. I mean, granted, probably the 416 Ruger and 375 are probably. The 416 Ruger will probably outperform it, but
why?
But it's a classic round. I guess it's kind of classic.
And there's something to be said about that. And you know what? We didn't plan any of this, but the fact that you guys are talking about the 375 H&H and the 404 Jeffrey being classic, it's why we picked you guys for the Revolver podcast, because not that they're completely outdated. That's certainly not true, but there's a lot of nostalgia that goes along with the Revolvers, and from the Cowboys in the Wild Wild West to Dirty Harry to the action movies of the 80s and 90s, like you mentioned, there's just a cool factor to it that you can't quantify. And it sounds like your personalities maybe trend to that kind of nostalgia.
That way.
Awesome. Well, guys, I appreciate you taking the time out to come on the show. Nick, we'll have you back on for some more episodes. Whitey, you'll definitely be back on the show as well. And thanks again, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Guys, hopefully you enjoyed this educational episode on the Revolver, going clear back into the last century and beyond, and then to present day. The Revolver, tons of usage, and for the handgun hunter, it is the definite firearm with a smattering of different cartridges to choose from and great bullet options for everybody. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll catch you on the next one.